Hello, I'm Tim Smith with the Adams County Historical Society, and welcome to another Monuments Monday on just a beautiful fall afternoon. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Pennsylvania's moved monuments. In an earlier video in the series, I mentioned the basic story or the premise. In 1887, the Pennsylvania State Legislature passed an act providing money for each regimental association from that state that fought at the Battle of Gettysburg so they could put up a monument. And these regimental associations, they put out bids, they examined a whole bunch of options, they chose a design for a monument. The monument was constructed or made, it was brought out to the battlefield, it was placed on the battlefield, and then they showed up for a dedication ceremony. Now, many of the Pennsylvania regimental associations had already taken steps and raised their own money and put up a monument on the Gettysburg battlefield ahead of this appropriation by the state of Pennsylvania. So those who already had monuments either used the appropriation from the state to add something to their monument, to improve their monument, or they built a new monument and then the old monument that had already been on the battlefield for a few years, they moved it to another location on the Gettysburg National Military Park to mark a secondary position. So the 121st Pennsylvania Infantry from Philadelphia had put up a monument here in 1886. And I'm standing near the approximate location of the original monument. They were part of Biddle's brigade, and on the first day of the battle, North Carolinians outflanked their position here, and they were driven back to Seminary Ridge in heavy fighting. So when they got their appropriation, they decided to put up a new monument. And this monument here beside us was dedicated on July 4th, 1888. And the other monument, there was a dislocation, the original monument, they actually dismantled and moved to Cemetery Ridge at the position that they were positioned during Pickett's charge. So today, that monument is on the other side of town. And it's interesting when we discuss these moved monuments, I wonder which monument has been moved the farthest. But that's a pretty good distance that it was moved to. And you can see the original monument today along Hancock Avenue. But one of the interesting things, and we'll show the photograph here in an enlargement, but there is an image by William Tipton that he took when this monument was being constructed and the veterans came out to the monument. If I had to guess, perhaps this is on July 4th, 1888, and perhaps their monument was not fully completed when they dedicated the new monument. But you can see the new monument in place, and the original monument is also sitting here at the same location. And another Tipton photograph actually shows the two monuments side by side. So in this case, the original monument was here, they built a subsequent monument, and then later this one was moved to Cemetery Ridge. Just another example of what we're talking about. The original monument to the 149th Pennsylvania was placed here was dedicated in October of 1886. And there's a couple views of the monument dedication here with the McPherson barn in the background. And again, when they got their appropriation from the state, they actually moved the original monument on Hancock Avenue near their position for the third day of the battle, and they put up this really nice monument at this location with the Pennsylvania soldier with the bucktail on it. Now, this isn't the only reason that they move monuments, just because of the appropriation. So just one more thing, let me show you another reason why monuments might be moved on the battlefield. So another example of the reason that monuments might be moved around the battlefield is simply because of construction. If you compare this scene that we're standing in right here with old photographs of this monument. This is the monument to John Burns, by the way. It was placed here in 1902. It was dedicated in 1903. And you can see the road is at a slightly different angle. You can actually see the barn off to the right in older photographs of this monument too. So it's obvious when you look at the older monuments, it doesn't line up. I remember the first time I came out of here to examine this, I figured out right away that the road has really been moved. And basically, the story is that the road came down off of the Chambersburg Pike, Stone Avenue, and it made a 90-degree turn at the Herbst Woodlot and made another 90-degree turn at the monument to the 7th Wisconsin. And so, you know, the roads were put in the 1890s, and by the early 1900s, there's automobiles riding around, and these hairpin turns that were, you know, safe for carriages were just a menace for the early automobile and, of course, the early driver that had no experience. So I think it was around 1940 that they actually removed that road, and then they put a new road in that has a gradual bend in it that leads over into the Herbst Woodlot. And after they did that, then they moved monuments that were back along the original road and moved them up to the improved road. And right here are two monuments that were moved. So we have behind the camera, there's a monument to the 14th Brooklyn's early morning position on July 1st, and that one was originally back there along the original road. And John Burns' monument was actually on the other side of the road. And we're going to actually take you to the other side of the fence, because you can go out there and you can see the spot where the original monument was. So here, if you walk around behind the fence off of Stone Avenue, you can see the original base of the John Burns monument back from here where the original road bed was. Now, this site more accurately represents where John Burns, the civilian hero of the battle, actually ran into the rear of the 150th Pennsylvania on the first day of the battle and asked that regiment if he could fight with them. Of course, you might know the story. They thought it was interesting and wanted to fight, but they sent him off to fight with the 7th Wisconsin. Of course, John Burns was wounded on the first day of the battle, became celebrated for his role in the fighting, met Abraham Lincoln on November 19th when he came to give the famous Gettysburg address, was actually given a pension by Congress in December of 1863. There was a poem written about him in 1864. Eventually, a painting was done of him, or an illustration by N.C. Wyeth, and he became really, really famous. And here's another look at that road we were just talking about. And you can see the road came to the Herbst Woodlot, made a 90-degree turn, came down to this spot right here. And in front of the 7th Wisconsin monument, the road made another hairpin turn. So you can see that the road as originally put in for carriages had to be redesigned for the automobile. One last thing is that according to Joseph Riggs of Gettysburg, who was actually in the 165th Pennsylvania Drafted Militia, John Burns was a friend of his, and John Burns had fought in the first day of the battle, according to him, from behind trees that were just to the north of the 7th Wisconsin Monument. And here we'll provide a photograph from the John White Johnson collection. It actually illustrates the trees that he fought behind that used to be there. If you like the historical content that we put on our YouTube channel, please subscribe and perhaps share this video with your friends.